Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to iPullRank's Fireside Chat for Women's History Month. I am Shantel Branch, Director of Client Services or Director of Client Strategy, and I'm here with my esteemed colleagues Reilly McGavern and Hess. And we're going to talk a little bit about Women's History Month, what it's like to be a woman in corporate America from different generational vantage points. Reilly, I guess we'll say hello to you first. Introduce yourself. Tell the
Hi.
folks what you do.
My name is Reilly McGavern. I am a senior digital marketing analyst at iPullRank. And so a lot of what I do day to day, working on content strategy, I do a lot of keyword research, a lot of collaboration with the other digital marketing analysts and associates at iPullRank. But yeah, been working in the marketing world for about 4 years now. And yeah,
And you would be Generation Z?
I'm Gen Z. Yes.
Gen Z all day. Okay, Cami.
Hi, I'm Cami Hess. I'm the Executive Director of Operations here at iPullRank. And I guess I would say my job is to just make sure these folks can do their job as smoothly as possible. That's sort of how I see it. I've been in the work world for this many years. No, seriously, since the late 80s. So I guess which generation I am. Well, I don't want to talk about that though, because I'm like straddling boomers and I don't like, I want to reject my generation because that puts me in the same as my parents. And there's
Well, people used to have kids at like 12, so it's different then. It's very different.
yeah. So yeah, that's I guess my technical generation. Having been born in 1964, that's the last year of the boomer
So
generation,
you're
believe it
like
or
a
not.
so you're like a late boomer, early Gen Xer, which means that it's pretty good that we have this representation. The only thing we're missing is a millennial because I'm like a later Gen Xer, but I think I fall weird because I'm like an exennial, sort of, kind of, because I grew up with the internet. I had a computer in my house. So
Mhm.
we've experienced and existed as women in the workforce in different ways, different spaces, and different times. And what we wanted to do was talk about that today. It's Women's History Month. Women's History Month, I think, has been an official thing since about 1978. I believe it started in California, probably on the tail end of second wave feminism. It's a great way for all of us to take a few moments to pause and think about all of the excellent contributions that women have made to the world. So Agpul Rank has about, what are we, about 30%, 40% women?
Yep.
Yeah, so we're about 40% women. We thought it would be a great thing for us to grab a few ladies from different areas who experience corporate America in different ways and see where we're aligned, where we've been different, how some folks have paved the way, and how some folks are kind of like taking less crap as they move through their work world. So I would like to say, I want to ask both of y'all this, and then I'll also weigh in. Talk to me about what your experience is as a woman in corporate America.
It's funny now you're making me be all nostalgic, but I think it's definitely changed. Um,
Mhm.
one, just like a funny anecdote that I just remembered this morning is years ago, like probably early 2000s, I happened to watch flipping channels and I watched the movie Working Girl.
Great movie.
I think it came out in like 88,
Eight.
9,
Mhm.
7, somewhere around there. And it looked so dated initially until I started seeing things in it that really reminded me, even simple things like how I would wear like skirt and nylons and like the little socks and my tennis shoes to walk because I live in Boston. So I worked in the city, I lived in the city. Um, and how the vibe was in that time was so different from where I was in the early 2000s that I had completely forgotten because I started working in 1986. And it really, like, it took a movie, which was sort of weird, to bring me back viscerally to some of those times and really showed me how much things had changed in all of that time. So I'll watch it if you want to be disturbed.
There's always Mad Men if you want to get even more disturbed.
Well, yeah, that was before my time, but yes.
Absolutely, yes. Right,
Oh
right.
man, for me, it's kind of crazy because I graduated in 2020, which meant that I never have had an in-person corporate job. I've only ever
Mhm,
worked remote, which is pretty crazy to think about. And
mhm,
the closest I ever was to working in person was, like internships or part-time jobs
mhm.
or freelancing I would do while I was still in college. But yeah, once 2020 hit, I've never stepped foot in an office. I've never had like the kind of dress code that is expected of me, like what Cami is talking about. I think it's definitely like really different. And I mean, I think the way I operate in corporate America honestly is still really similar to like a lot of my senior like seminar classes where
Mhm.
you're expected to come in with a certain seriousness and like wanting to get things done, but it's also not so high of expectations, I would say, where it's like women are expected to operate and act a certain way within the office or within teams. And that's really cool. And I owe that
Mhm.
to the woman who came before me that I have the freedom to just be myself and not feel like I have to, fit into a certain mold to be taken seriously at work.
Right. I think I sit in the middle between you guys because when I came into working in corporate spaces, um, it's vastly different from the way it is now. So while it was not a place where people could physically touch you and harass you, there were other ways that perhaps there were ways that women were kind of put into their places. So I'll give you an example. One, dress code always, you know, you were expected to dress a certain way. But I come through into the business casual world where khakis are becoming, very ubiquitous and like, dress, you can dress down, untucked shirts, button down, striped shirts, much more relaxed than what it was like when I would see my mom every day get dressed to go to work. Like I said, stockings, socks, sneakers, or tennis shoes, whichever, depending on what region of the world you come from. But for me, it was the business casual, but then there was still a lot of, and I started working in suburbia, so outside of New York City. So there was even that to it. So I think a lot about things like potlucks. There was always potlucks, and there were always these holiday centered um, events. And the people who really contributed and did all the work were women. It was say it was a sales floor. Sure, maybe the guys would bring soda, but women would cook, coming to like they'd have to see clients, they have kids, they have all this stuff going on, and they're like teetering in the parking lot with like a cupcake tray, or a cookie tray, or stopping at the supermarket to get fruit or do this or do that or do the third. And it was kind of almost like expected because it wouldn't have happened if the women didn't even really put it together. Maybe like somebody, like a guy, might buy the pizza or what have you. Um, and in some ways, I'm like, I kind of miss that because it was kind of cool. But what were we missing by focusing on that, and how were we being looked at differently because we were focusing on that? One other thing that people would always talk about is like, don't coordinate everything because that's something that used to become like the woman's job. Even if you were like an executive, why are you coordinating the holiday party in when you have other people who could do it? And the male leaders, they would just like someone do it, and then the next, you're doing your job and you're coordinating. And if you have other things outside, which tends to seem to be the problem or issue for women, is that there's a lot of juggling. Your career is one part of what you do and not the center of what you do. And I don't necessarily know if, I guess I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that that's still the case? Like, do you think that there's consideration for family at this point in time? Was it different? What do you guys think?
I mean that's a whole. It's hard to tell. At least for me, I'll just speak personally. What is sort of society putting on me, and what am I putting on myself
Mhm.
personally? I know there's been a lot written about um, the pace with which women's careers either continue or don't, or take a sharp turn or get back on track based on whether or not or when they decide to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
I had kids when I was 38 and 40. So I was working, I worked the whole time. I went back when they were like 8 weeks old, like able to go into daycare
Mm-hmm.
the whole time, traveled, did the whole everything, what you have to do when you travel with infants. Um, but it definitely, there was an actual point at which I was in discussions for a position and I knew I wanted to start a family, and I took myself out of the running for it because it would have involved too much travel. At that time I was traveling enough as it was, and I don't I definitely don't have any regrets about that. And I don't know, I think that I think it's probably both, but I definitely don't want to say this is something society did to me. I made the decision to do that based on the life I wanted to manage and how I wanted to manage it. But I think it happens whether you do something more subtle like that, whether you decide to stay home with your kids for a few years and then you have to re-enter the workforce. Like all of those personal decisions that people make definitely impact their careers, and sometimes men make them too. It's not like a male female thing. It's a managing your family thing. But I think traditionally, maybe that's changing more. Women made those decisions more than men did. It was sort of more of a default. And I think it's probably more of a conversation now, than it used to be, but it's definitely a thing. And now that doesn't mean, back in the day when it was like, you couldn't divulge that you were pregnant in a job interview. It's not like that anymore overtly, but I think there are considerations when you're going to have a family, and there need to be discussions about what that means potentially in your career.
Well, and even to that point, Cami, I think like based on, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and for that, like I'll be forever grateful because it is a full-time job when you decide to like move away from corporate America and, make the choice to raise a family. But for me, where it's like I'm only 25, I'm getting married this year, but also I don't know what my future is going to look like when I'll have kids or what that looks like for my career. And, I think there's so many things like something I love about iPullRank is that we do equal family leave. So, it's not just the mom who can only take maternity leave or, a lot of companies don't offer that same benefit to a dad. But,
Mm-hmm.
no one asks the dad if he wants to spend the first 3 months at home hanging out with his baby. And it puts a lot more pressure on women to feel like, okay, well, I get this time. And at the end of 3 months, I got to decide if I'm coming back or if I'm not. And, you look at like Nordic countries or like Iceland where they have like crazy amounts of family leave time where it's encouraged and everyone is encouraged to be part of the family unit and contribute to
Mm-hmm.
the same way. And I think it's definitely a really interesting part of American society where, you know, I think it's a different angle that a lot of people take where it's like, oh, well, now women and men can be equally successful. So you both have to work. And it's not really about like looking at like, oh, well, what does time off mean for families? Or what does this mean for like equal like time in parenting, like getting to have those same opportunities, whether it's with your kids or with work. And so I think that's something really interesting where it's like, instead of, being like women should be able to have the choice whether they want to stay with their family or they want to go back to work. But it definitely is more of a thing, I think, in the US where it's like, well, you should have it all. You need to do all of it by yourself. And I think that is something that can be really hard for some a woman in corporate America to have to make those choices.
Yeah, and I don't have kids personally. Fortunately, my friends have made the decision and made their contributions in my stead. But what I did get to observe, for people in my age group is that there was a delay of becoming parents. So either people became parents really early and then had to like hustle to finish college, get into corporate America. What that means is that if you have a little kid and there's an expectation for you to like blow out late hours, if you're a mom, it's hard for you to work a 13-hour day because you might be the primary caregiver. So unless you've got people to step in the gap for you, you are going to delay the growth in your career because the expectation is for you to work late. Or the other side of it, you delay your motherhood, and then you are at a much higher level when you become a mother. So now you expect yourself, either you think so or society thinks so, that you are meant to be like the chief vice president, president, executive, founder, and the chief,
all the
all those
things.
things in your household, while only having 12 weeks maternity leave, and all of this needs to be done. And the expectation is that you still are to do it, but now you're older,
Gets
which makes
harder.
it gets harder, like and again, because I've looked at friends who started young and like what they were able to execute as really young moms, they got a lot done. It was hard, it was difficult. Some of them went to graduate school while raising kids, some of them were on their own and went to grad school and started careers. But where they are now, maybe if they weren't parents, or maybe if the world was a little more fair, they would have been even further. And I'm very fortunate to have some very high achieving women who, even some, like I said, some are married moms, some are single moms, some are not moms, and they've managed to go pretty far. But I do think that those stops where you have to be like, I've got to leave at 5:30 because I have to pick my kid up from daycare. Because if I don't pick my kid up from daycare on time, I'm going to get charged a fee, which is going to impact me financially. Which, so everything, so
Mm-hmm.
it is not an easy thing. I think I also kind of came up in a time where jobs started to have daycare on site, which before I think was kind of unheard of. And there's still some organizations that still have it. I think at a certain point in the 90s, companies were really starting to try to treat people like those families. And a lot of that's been washed away, probably with the first bubble. And then with 2008, a lot of that stuff just got washed away for other trends. But there was a period in time, I think, that maybe ladies got to take a few extra steps forward because they could drive to work in the car with their kid and like drop them over to daycare, work, and then kind of scoop them and, move along a little bit. Um, yeah, it's wild. Also, the idea. I wonder if you, Cami, maybe you can answer this. Have you ever? Do you think you've ever been held back because someone thinks you might be about to have a baby, or thinks you're about to get married, and maybe thinks, let's not consider Cami because you know.
No, actually, I don't think so. I do. That doesn't make me think though how much things have changed, because sort of two things about that were, Reilly, that's cool that you pointed out that we do have family leave and it's equal, and I think that is a
Mhm.
great thing. In many, 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 many places in this country, maternity leave is still a medical leave. It's not even a family leave. It's like, and I remember that when I took it thinking, what do you mean it's a medical leave? It's literally short term disability. And I'm like, I'm having a baby and you're telling me I'm on disability. And now I'm grateful that they had something, because I know many places in this country have absolutely nothing for women. But I do think that is slowly, slowly changing more to like a leave than a disability kind of thing.
Right.
Um, but even all way back, like not necessarily even having kids, but one thing, again, back to my working girl analogy, different things pop up when I started thinking about all of this. And in one of my very first job, so late 80s, um, we had a young woman that was around my age then, so I was right out of college, that asked her boss, who was older male, probably at that point 50, for a raise. And we all knew we were all around the same age, men and women, young. She had prepped with us, gone through the whole thing. And instead, he said no and brought her a dozen roses the next day. So we started at what would have been a hashtag, but of raises, not roses, was the thing that but there were no hashtags because there were no computers or anything then. But I mean, that literally, like, I'm still working, and in my quote unquote lifetime of working, that happened, like in an office. She prepped, we
Yeah.
asked her, it didn't have anything to do with having a child, but it was definitely, and the most interesting sort of dynamic that came out of that was watching the males that had been sort of with us all, that were our age, with their jaws on them, because even they knew for a fact that never would have happened to them. They might have been told no, about the raise, but they wouldn't have had a dozen roses on their desk the next day. So like things like that make me realize how much things have changed. Not that there aren't jerks out there in the world that will do certain things like that, but that kind of thing I would hope would not be like certainly broadly tolerated anymore in this day and age.
Hope that for me, it's funny that you say that. That never happened to me, but when I was first starting to work in professional roles, I was a salesperson. And it was clear that I was younger than most of the people on my team. And I would go to see clients, and there were clients that would like hug you and kiss you. And they would be like, "Oh, it's my girls." And like, and not like Euro kisses. So not like mwah mwah. No, like, and I don't really love when people like touch me anyway, but it's not. I love when people touch me. I don't like strange people touching me. Like, don't put your hands on me. But it's like they would just.
Yeah.
But in business, the gentleman would just feel the need. They were free to converge, and it wasn't just a kiss. It's like someone's arm is around you, so you have to like slide away, almost like Pepe Le Pew and that little cat, because it's just like, oh, it's so good to see you, or like rub your shoulders. Like, I think Reilly, you would literally just be like so shocked.
Like, what is happening?
What is happening? Because it's just like
I would not.
Definitely get the Reilly cold shoulder.
Yeah, it was like a space invasion where you're coming to do business and you want something and you're coming to sit down and talk. And it's like, I know you didn't kiss my boss.
Right.
Who's only 4 years older than me. He's young too. So you could call him a boy, but you don't call him a boy. It's like, oh, it's my girl. Oh, it's so good to see you. Oh, you look beautiful. How you doing, sweetheart? And again, in New York, people, every place has a way of, older guy. Oh, how you doing, sweetheart? Oh, such a beautiful girl. Just all of these comments when we're really here to talk about something innocuous as like your HR needs, no less. HR. So it's just, yeah. So it's that thing that you're describing, Kimmy, where it's like, I think that I observe how people engage with Reilly. I observe how Reilly engages with folks. So that's not something that you have to deal with. It. Even if you worked in an office, I don't think you would have to deal with that. You wouldn't see your boss or the owner of your company coming and like hugging you and lingeringly rubbing your shoulder. He's good. I don't think any of that would happen. But
don't worry about it.
Sticking to the work thing, I do want to ask y'all about money. And I want to talk to y'all about salary. Like, women, men, we make less money. Do we accept it? Do we just know it to be the truth? How do we deal with it? How have you dealt with it in the past? And what do you wish for the future?
Well, I guess I can start with that. It's definitely a really weird thing. Like, I know for generations a little bit older than me, salary was not really something, and for just like most people in general, salary is not something you would discuss with your friends. It wasn't something you would really talk about with anyone. Yeah, but your family, like your really, really close people. And that, I think, was something that really like got drilled into my head during college and like high school, and the entire time I was growing up. It's like, you need transparency to understand like what other people are doing. Like, you need to have transparency to understand like what's fair, because it's like my work and what I'm going to do isn't based on my gender. It's like my hard work and all of my knowledge and all of my experience built up to this point doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I'm a girl. But, it's like one of those things I remember growing up where someone made a comment to me and they're like, oh, it's nice that you have a gender neutral name. It'll be easier for you to get interviews. And it's something that I think about where it's like, to even have that barrier to entry where it's like, oh, but you won't even get the interview, and this is like an intersectional topic too, because people who have, not white Anglo-Saxon names have to deal with the same sort of thing. But one thing I appreciate is like me and my girlfriends, we all talk about our salaries. We all talk about our benefits. It's something that we try to be as open and as encouraging about as possible. And like my guy friends too, but it's definitely something that I think is like, I'm glad my generation does this, because otherwise it's, you're fighting an uphill battle by yourself, because you're not ever going to know like the true average, or that's something else. Like with New York passing the pay transparency laws, where like on job listings, you have to say what the range is. And I think that better empowers people to say, you know what, like, yeah, I do have that experience and I do have the ability to do all these things that they're asking me. And you can ask for that higher amount because you know that's what you're worth. And I think that was something for me when I was freelancing. I totally undersold myself. Like I was doing crazy amounts of work, putting in crazy hours, like back when I was living in Colorado, working for all these different like local businesses. And I would only charge, like $35 an hour, which is like, then you look at the more competitive average of what digital marketing freelancing looks like, and it's nothing. But it's just, I didn't have any knowledge of that or anyone in my corner until meeting like people at iPullRank who's like, no, like your work does have a lot of value and you are really good at what you do. So you have to fight for what you want. And, that's something else I appreciate, that it, like with all of my promotions and all of like my growth at IPR, it's never been like, I feel like I have to go and be like, no, I deserve this. And really like trying to get people to see the good work I've done because, I'm working and that's all the work that I have to do for people to see what I'm doing.
Right.
It's not so much of like, where if I was worried about a male coworker and myself being in the same role, and it's like, well, I really need to keep a tally of all the things that I do. And I really need to like show my value in this role where, I do that still, but it's more for myself as like I continue to grow and like want to develop myself further. It's not something where I have it in my back pocket because I'm like, oh my gosh, I won't get a raise if I don't show them all the things I've done.
Right.
I see this from two sides. I of course have a story because I came out of I feel like I got my education in college and then I started working and I got my education again, because even though it was in the 80s, I thought, oh, I'm good, we're equal, like of course. And within my first year of my job, I found out totally by accident, my first job, that someone who had just been hired to do a role similar to what I was doing was hired at $10,000 more than I was. And he was a he. And there was nothing. In fact, if anything, first of all, I'd been there longer. And second of all, my job was a little higher level than his. And so I went to the CFO at that time of a small company. And I said, like, I know I shouldn't know this, but I found this out. And this is not okay. Can you explain this to me? And they gave me a $10,000 raise on the spot. But the two things I took away from that are, one of like, wow, you better educate yourself, sister, because you're a little naive. But two, what I carried with me that, Reilly, I was going to interrupt you, but I saw you get around to it, is you should always make sure that you're fighting for what you think you're worth. Because I loved this place that I worked. They were amazing, amazing, amazing people. I had one of the best first jobs ever. But no one is looking after you like you. And so the flip side of that, now I am responsible for partially deciding and advising on what we pay people. That's part of operations. So the benefit I've had of being in that role is always being able to make sure that there's parity 100%, and counseling people that as long as it's done professionally, I encourage people to push and to ask for what they think they deserve, because if I can't explain why they can't get it, then they should get it. So I think that is like, I've been fortunate enough to see kind of both sides of that. I do think that it's such a subtle thing out there, and not everybody is wired to sort of ask for what they deserve. And you're right to point out transparency, and that is one thing that has dramatically improved. Like it is 100% different how people think about that now. Not alone the laws that you mentioned. Now there, some of it is regulated, but it's just how people talk. It's not taboo anymore,
Right.
among friends, and information is power.
Yeah.
So.
It's one of those things too where I'm glad that is being released. My salesy friends, we broke that a long time ago, because when part of your compensation is tied, when your compensation is tied to an achievement, salespeople start to get braggy. or just stressed or all of the different things. So we want to, it was always, I'm a retired salesperson, as I always tell people. Um, so you would want to talk about like what's the base, what's the commission, like how often do people make commission, and what's that number? Is that number real or is it fake? And the only way for you to know, because sometimes a company will tell you, oh, we'll pay you $23,000 a year, but you can earn 100,000 because it's $80,000 in commission. Well, is there anyone in this place and space that's actually hitting that number, or is it one person? Because that's not going to do. That means that this is more of a Sisyphean task than a real job opportunity. So people tend to talk more. And it's funny because I was going to say women in sales tend to start to free up their ability to talk about money because the compensation starts to get fair ish. Because the commission's the commission if you're
Mm-hmm.
in the role.
Right.
But this is where it gets broken down, that base salary.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, oh, well, this person has a family. So they got promoted to senior and they get a little extra to, extra in their pocket because he has a family.
You're like, well, I'm a
He
better salesperson.
doesn't matter. This person's got a family. Well, this person's married. And it's like, well, hell, I'm not. I really need the help because I don't have anybody. It's just one of those things where like there is a mindset that like men need more money than women do because they've got more people depending on them, and women can, I guess, figure it out. I don't know.
Responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah,
But you don't.
and then and also like, and that kind of also ties sometimes when you don't have kids. It's like, well, what if so and so has kids? I'm like, okay, I could have like a gambling habit or something. Like I need money.
And we know you do.
Yeah, obviously I do, but I'm not always that great at negotiating um salaries inside. But I know if I'm gonna leave, I don't move. I have like these reasons of like amounts of money I'll move space to space for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like really well thought out. Like if I'm gonna go, it's like, well, I have to do the math, and I do math in my head. You guys know, and it's like, would learning new people, meeting new people, be worth this amount of money? Because it all has to kind of be worth my while, not just the work. It's like, and if it's gonna be lateral, it's like, where's the benefit? So I try to negotiate on my end because I don't think I'm always that great at negotiating. But I think that from now on, sorry, Cammy, anytime I'm offered money, it's going to be like, can I have more? Because anytime I hear anyone who's offered money ask for more money, they always get it. I have never heard a story about someone, even if it's like another $1,000, they always get more money. So I'm going to have to start to enact how I work with my clients, with my professional, because I just don't. I'm like, all right, that feels fair. That feels right. I kind of know industry standards. That'll do. Okay, let's go. And because I tend to live in commission worlds, I'm always like, whatever I need to get, I'm going to be able to get on
You're
the
going to do
commission
it for
side of things.
yourself, though. That's what you're
Right.
thinking. I'm going to be able to
Yes.
do this for myself.
Right.
So,
But that could be because I'm wired to think that I'm not going to be fairly paid on the pay side. So
yeah,
I'm just going to chase the part that I can control,
that you can
which is
control.
not good.
No.
It's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because I've watched people make obscene amounts of money and never produce, but they were able to support themselves.
Yeah.
Because they were male and they just walked in it with a chutzpah about them, and there was that. Now, to the male female thing and how men show up in places, I do want to ask you guys, do you guys feel like I mean, Riley, yours is a little different, but do you feel like you show up as your like most authentic self at work? And that includes at work functions,
You
work
know,
outings, socializing within the work realm.
to be totally honest, I feel like, my intelligence, like my strategy, all of that is me. But some days, I do pull it back because sometimes I worry, like, if I'm too bubbly, if I'm too outgoing, if I'm too offering to like do too many things, then it's like, well, as soon as you're not feeling that way one day, people make comments. It's why I don't wear makeup to work most days. I take really good care of my skin, but, it's like, I don't want someone, I come in not wanting to wear a full face of makeup and have comments made where it's like, "Oh, you look so tired. Oh, are you sick?" And I would never ever say that to any of my coworkers, where it's like, someone's personal appearance isn't a place to make comments regardless, but especially with your coworkers who's, those are the people that you're supposed to be able to trust and work day in and day out with. And that kind of stuff. I think I decided after college, I was like, guys don't have to wear makeup to work, so I don't think I will either. And
Nice.
that's not to say that it's like there are days where it's like, yeah, I do want to wear makeup and I do want to look nice, but it's also like, you have to be conscious of like expectations you create with people. And I'm always going to show up and look like professional and put together and presentable, but it is a fine line of like, am I doing this to be like performative for the people around me, or am I doing this because I want to look this way? And I think that's
Right.
something that is really hard for a lot of girls my age, where, there's kind of this like, a brand of feminism where it's like, well, you can do all these feminine things and you can be empowered by them and you can have all the things that you want to have. But
Hmm.
on the other hand, it's like, but that's also playing into the things that, are expected of women. So it's hard sometimes to feel empowered when you feel like there's an expectation on like what you're supposed to do. And I think that's also like with my personality, it's like if I feel like I'm being like a little bit too silly at work or like having a little bit of fun, like it's not even that like my coworkers would ever be negative towards me, but I think I get self-conscious about that where I'm like, "Oh, that probably wasn't like the most professional thing to say," or, "Was that too casual?" And I think it's really hard to find that like line where, you're working with these people every day. Of course you're going to be close with them, but I wonder sometimes like if my male coworkers ever are like, "Oh, like, I don't even have to think about, like, the things I say or how I joke because to them, it's not something where you're always wondering how people are perceiving you."
I think also for you, what can create a little bit of friction probably is that then you have to click a button and we're gone. So you don't know really what happened. At least if you were sitting in the room
In
and like
person. Yeah.
you made and I laughed,
Actually,
and then like later like we laughed about it again, you'd know like it's cool. Or conversely, if it was weird, like you would know.
You'd be like,
You know
let's
what I
take
mean?
a picture.
hopefully
Wait,
I'm not
You'd be like,
being, but
okay, Reilly, like, and they'd like slide away from you. But I think for me as a woman, I'm also black. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Don't be alarmed. I'm a black woman.
thank you for
As a
letting us
black
know.
woman in the corporate world, I will say my mom was a boomer, like a late, she was born in like 1955. She was always in corporate America. And some of the things that she taught me about how I was supposed to conduct myself as a black woman in corporate America, yes, I'm aware of all of those things, but I think I do about now at this point in my life, at this age, probably about 13% of the stuff that she told me to do. But I'm talking about like, if my mom could see me now, I have natural hair. Like my hair is not relaxed. I wear braids, not in the summer, and not when I'm on vacation. I don't wear stockings. I'm wearing Jordans right now, and jeans and a sweatshirt. That would be appalling. I don't always. I utilize colloquialisms in public spaces. Um, hmm. Yeah, there's so many things that I do. I don't always properly agree my subject and verbs in places and spaces that would not be what I would do typically. Where like 24-year-old me spoke impeccable English in workspaces because I didn't want anyone to think I was less smart than other people, even though I had just graduated from college. And as Riley knows, I wrote a dictionary. I have a vast vocabulary. I'm an excellent reader. I'm a well read, well educated person who also speaks AVE in my life. But
yeah.
for a very long time, that wouldn't have been something that I would do. I would always code switch. So now I don't really necessarily code switch. Um, how else do I show up differently? Sometimes I realize that people, I think this is age. I don't really care if people don't get it in a certain way. I'm not approaching people with malice. I'm a lot more clear about like when I dislike a thing.
A hard one. I feel
Yeah.
like for me, I'm still figuring out how to be
Yeah.
direct in my communication.
Yeah.
I'm always saying just or quite or oh maybe or let
Yeah.
me know instead of
Or how
just
Yeah.
about sorry? Do you guys have we went through a big thing in a previous life where somebody literally banned the word sorry. And it made us realize I I think it was 90 to 100% of us were women, and I absolutely do it where you start your sentence with sorry, like sorry, can you da da da, sorry, can you, and we made a pact to stop ourselves.
Hmm.
But it was frightening and eye opening for me how often, and still I still do it to this day, but it still dings in my head when I say it. So I think I do it less because it definitely a bell rings when I do it.
Yeah.
But it's like that's the way that I pave everything, all the way from a silly ask to what might be an important idea or what I feel like is an important idea that I want to bring forward. Why are you opening the door with an apology?
Yeah.
Like,
And I would do things not to soften, but I was in spaces oftentimes where I would be like the only black person in the space. And the thing that would get swung in my direction was, oh, that person's scary. Oh, I'm scared of her. And I'm like, you're not scared of me. If you don't like me, it's cool. I don't like you either. Or if, you know, it sounds like the person's upset. I'm not upset. I'm disappointed. I don't appreciate this. This person just cursed you out, slammed the door, and stormed away. And I'm just asking a follow-up question in a firm tone, and it seems like I'm being combative. So there are all of this policing stuff. So you have to kind of like be mindful, but then like I can't not speak up. So it's like we're gonna have to fight this out. And if you want to fire me because you don't like mouthy black women, then that's cool. I probably shouldn't work here. But I do challenge it. So especially, and I have to challenge women. So when I would hear women say stuff like, "Oh, can you go ask her a question? She's very scary," and I'm like, "She's not scary. She's just black. What's up?" Like, and then the person kind of looks at me like, and I'm like, "Look, you want to be my friend, like, then and we're gonna work together. I can't support you doing that, whether you're a guy, because it would be guys and women who, oh, that person's so scary. I'm like, they're not scary. They're just black or firm and black and a woman, but just firm typically. And it's just like,
well, and that's
don't
like
do
the
that.
same thing. It's like, if you're trying to be more assertive or you're more firm or you
Mhm.
want to make a point and people are like, oh, well, she's just rude. She's hard
Yeah,
to work with.
yeah.
And it's like, if you,
Difficult is one of
yeah.
those ones.
And it's like, well, I don't think you would say that about a male coworker. You
Yeah.
would say that he's strong-willed. He's an independent thinker. He's
Hmm.
trying to be like original and creative.
Yep. It's why I don't accept bossy. Bossy. If you want to tick me off, call me bossy, and y'all know the other one, and or call me maternal, because I always say at work, if I was your mom, I could hit you. I cannot hit you. I'm not your mom. I might be older than you. First of all, there's few people whose moms I'm old enough to be, but still, like even if I am, that's not the relationship here. And I'm not bossy because someone would never call like someone like Mike King bossy. So like women usually get called bossy, and it's like, nope, we got to stop doing that. Not bossy.
Well, and I think exactly, Chantel, that's why we soften our language so much because, there's a fear of you have to walk the line between being, oh, she's intelligent and she's like, she has good ideas, but also she's not rude. So
Hmm.
it's like trying to play the two sides of the same coin where it's like, well,
Right.
how can I appease everyone at work so that they'll like me? I think
Right.
that's another big thing is women in the workplace really have to worry about likability.
Likability. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I will say this from personal experience, not from me, not because everyone likes me, but just I kind of know how to deal with people. But it is hard when you are a super capable woman who demonstrates no interest in being likable. People don't know what to do with you. You are very scary. When you are capable and not interested in being friends, they don't know what to do with those types of women. And I mean, I do. I'm just like, well, can you do the thing? I don't care.
right.
But like generally like being around women, working with women. It's cool. I mean, men are fine too. Like no shots, guys. But I don't mind it. But yeah, when women are not interested in being friends, but not being mean, just being like, oh, right, this person doesn't like me, but we still have to work on this together. We don't have to be best buds. Like,
Yeah.
it's cool. But we should be people, because guys say all kinds of stuff in front of us. So, like, if you've got like a crazy sense of humor, Reilly, you shouldn't feel uncomfortable with people you spend 9 hours of 24
You're
hours with.
appropriately funny.
I
Well,
think you're funny.
thank you. No, I think that's just, it really, I think also the digital workplace plays into that a lot because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you could be having a great time with everyone. You end like your internal huddle and it's like, oh, it was a great call. And then you're just sitting
Then you
alone.
start replaying it like,
You're
oh
like,
man.
oh, like just the overthinking. And, I wish I didn't overthink like so many of my interactions on a day to day. And I just was more confident and like, yeah, like I did do a really good job. Or, it's like waiting for the validation of other people to be like,
Mhm.
oh, you killed that presentation. Like that was awesome to watch. And that is something that I want to work on for myself is just being like, yeah, I did own that. That was great. And not waiting for validation.
Right.
Because
Whether the praise comes or not.
yeah,
I have a
exactly.
question for you guys, because we do it in different ways, but like as women, one, did y'all have mentors that were women? And two, so two things. One, did you have mentors? Two, what was like the thing you learned from your mentor, if it was a lady, that you want to recount? And three, what do you guys do to try to mentor people? Like, is it like an action or does it happen naturally? Like, what's the story? So who wants to go first?
I'm so glad you asked that question because I was going to make sure to bring that up because I've been ridiculously lucky in my life, like ridiculously lucky to have amazing women mentors. Um, because I think representation is also important. I remember having a conversation with a designer when I used to work in kind of marketing communication. We would have this joking conversation about where are all the old designers who are women? Like where are all,
Mm,
honestly, it's one of the reasons that like I go with the gray hair because it's important for people to see that there are older women out there working
mm,
still, like when they're younger. So
contributing and doing
yeah, I
big
hope,
things.
hopefully
Yeah,
people
for sure.
wow, what's that dinosaur doing sitting there?
Even.
But I have had a lot, like really a lot, a ridiculous amount of folks, all the way from when I was right out of college and I was lucky enough to work in an educational nonprofit educational organization. So people were primed to help kind of teach me things and
Mhm.
uh, focus on how to help me open my own doors. And all of it, not any of it, has ever been in a formal mentoring program. So I think that's maybe a downside that I have is so I go about it in a more organic way than maybe formally because that's how it happened to me and it worked for
Right.
me. I think that can be a little bit of blinders. So I think about that a lot. And Reilly, we've had discussions about sort of a mentoring program here. But I've tried to do it sort of more organically
Mhm.
in through both how I kind of comport myself and in ongoing discussions with folks and trying to maybe push them out of their comfort zone. I've certainly hired a lot of people at different companies I have multiple women in my life that I've worked with at multiple jobs.
Mhm.
So kind of trying to bring people along that way. But really I've had friends, I have a friend in the advertising world who literally just has a string of horror stories about working with other women. And I have been, like I said, just ridiculously lucky. We would need
Mhm.
another hour and a half for me to name all the folks, but who have really just reached out and connected with me on many different levels
Mhm.
in a way that make me incredibly grateful.
Nice. Reilly?
For me, especially like coming into IPR, I was so lucky because pretty much from the get go, all of the people who surrounded me, like when I was onboarded, were women. So Alexandra was our director of content, but I mean, she was an amazing resource for me as I onboarded. And it was definitely a more like organic mentorship kind of
Mm-hmm.
like Cami was saying, but I mean, she just totally put her arms around me, was like, we're going to get you into all of these workflows. We're going to make sure you understand everything. And also just like having that open communication, which I think like for me is so valuable. And my one-on-ones with you, Chantel, every Friday that I look forward to so much, and having that relationship where we can be close as coworkers, but also like having such a strong like manager and subordinate like relationship there too, which is so important to me. And I think is completely like is the reason why I've been so successful here and like why I've learned and grown so much just over the past year. And that to me, or even just like with Sarah too, who like she's totally like made sure from day one, like anything I ever needed, she was there for me. And it's the same with Cami too. Like
Yeah.
I am so appreciative to have so many women in our company who are in these higher up positions, because I can look to them and say, all right, like they're doing it, I'm gonna do it too.
Right.
That to me, like I'm so grateful to have all of you guys, because it's just super empowering and it makes me want to show up and work harder. And I'm proud of the work that we do because I have people who are cheering me on and excited for me to be doing it. And I think that's a
Nice.
really big thing, is like I've never had to feel competitive with other women in my career. And that is something that I don't take for granted at all. Like to have a community of like women in corporate America who want you to succeed is amazing.
Yeah. I will say, one, thank you. Two, you're awesome. Three, I had a manager who I didn't think she was like the, whatever. I didn't look up to her. But we were in a meeting and I guess there was something that something was going on that I didn't love. And I was like, because I always would speak up. Um, I said, you know, um, I don't understand why we can't do X, Y, and Z. And she looked at me and she said, you know something? You always have something to say, but you always have an idea of how to fix it. Don't ever lose that. People come to meetings, they bitch, excuse me, and complain, and they don't have anything to offer. And she's like, every time you identify something's wrong, you always say, we could be doing this. And don't ever lose that. And like, I never didn't do that. Like, whenever I have something to say, I say, is there any way we can do this? Or why can't we do this? Or I don't understand why we don't do it this way. Because it's more useful than just being like, this is stupid. I think it's rude and it's not helpful. But you'll see people do that or just say nothing. It's like, well, I have a thought. I mean, y'all could do it now or not. And maybe I'm right. Usually I am. And then maybe we'll get back around to it when we get to it. But I said it. I didn't like hold it inside, because what are we going to get from me holding it inside? So if anyone wants advice, if you don't like the way things are going at work, just offer an alternative. And I try to like pull that out of people. Like, well, what do you think we should do? Like,
No, I think it's such a helpful exercise too. Because sometimes I think for a lot of women too, it's like you're so scared of saying the wrong thing that you won't say
mhm,
anything at all. And that to me is something I had to get over really quickly, because it's like, you're never going to get anything done if you're too afraid to make a mistake. We all make mistakes, and that's part of like learning how to work in corporate America, is you have to be okay with like not doing everything perfectly so you can get to where you want to be
mhm,
at your company.
mhm. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to be wrong. Guys don't they don't care
We're wrong all the time.
all the time, consistently. It's like a thing.
You know what, Reilly, you're making me realize too, though. I don't know what it's called. We got to come up with a name. Well, Shantel will come up with a name for it, but like reverse mentoring or something. But and Shantel, you and I talk about this a lot, sort of people from different generations. But mentoring is often thought of as like a one-way thing. It's like the older, experienced person mentoring someone younger. But I think it goes both ways. Like, and that's one of the things that I love about working with you, is just watching, and I had the privilege of doing that in my last position too, like working with young women coming right out of college. And, I really don't think it's just one way. Like I'm sort of up here on the mountaintop with my gray hair, imparting knowledge down on you. It's sort of a like more organic loop. And, once you stop learning, then it is time to kind of check out, or once you stop caring about that.
You gotta leave.
And, you come with a different set of experiences, as we've been discussing today, that totally different than mine, which means I have a lot that I can learn from you and, how I alter my working. So I just feel like mentoring is sometimes a thing, and it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I love that.
We need a word. Maybe we need a word for it.
It's like circular mentoring.
It is.
Like, I remember someone told me that another manager said, you do a real good job of managing up. So maybe it's like mentoring up. So like people are mentoring you from different angles, because you can learn a lot from everybody.
Yeah, the circle's good. I like that. I have such a reaction sometimes to the up down. Like I just have, like that.
It's like my reaction when Reilly says
on an org chart. I'm like, can I make it with bubbles?
Yeah.
How can I? Because I really don't.
Yeah, I'm with you, Cammie. It's like I don't love the term boss. Like I don't like it.
You don't like boss.
Yeah, like when someone's, I was like, that's my manager. I'm this person's manager, and it's just because it's such a negative hierarchy.
Right,
so
like
much ugliness tied to
it's
it.
better than supervisor. That's even worse. I must supervise you.
I'm watching you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No.
So I don't know if Aaron wants us. Like I don't know when our time's up.
Oh yeah, is he going to come cut us off?
I know he's going to be like a long-suffering producer.
You are done.
So I know that we probably should land the plane and wrap this up and all the other iPullRank isms, but maybe we should do like a little bit of like, I don't know. Is there any organization that you guys are members of or that you admire that you think would be useful for a woman from a professional perspective to consider or have joined, or that you've found has helped you guys out?
That's a tough question. I mean, I've been checking Keith out a lot. I think that is interesting, but I am not personally in any organization. A much more informal thing that I think people can start on their own that I've found to be very helpful. And so far it's only happened mostly around job searching, but I have a friend who's really good at gathering like sort of groups together for certain purposes. And it's been for, when someone gets her job. So she does this thing where she like curates these groups where she brings together like she keeps it like below 8 people, and you don't have to be looking for a job. It's just it reminds me of like the older like salon days, like whatever. And like I said, it's mostly been, one time it was for when someone had someone in their circle that was sick. So it was like a sort of that kind of support energy bringing it to the group. But 2 other times it was for people that were looking for jobs. So I guess, I mean, maybe it's similar to a book group, but I'm not in a book group. But that's a very like homegrown, like that's not, exactly what you asked. That's more kind of taking it on yourself versus joining a formal group.
To your point,
cool.
I'm going to say this though. Most of the people who I stay in touch with, who I worked with, are women.
Yeah.
And most of the people, and I'm talking about not just like friendships, but then also like work stuff, which also like work advice, just like my professional hive, for the most part, are women, and women who
I like professional hive. I like that.
Yeah, like it's women. Like I don't like if someone leaves, like also if you're friends with someone. If that makes sense. You find out if you're friends with someone who leaves a company the week after they leave. If you never hear from them again, you guys were not friends. And that's cool. You were co-workers. But if you end up connecting with folks, you've made a friend and they can kind of give you direction or be a connection. And I think that women sometimes don't always remember to network. So maybe staying in touch with people who you respect and you think their work is great could help you in the future, and you could help them. And I think that's great. Um,
Mhm.
as far as groups go, I follow Sister in Sales. One of my goals for 2023 was to do more digital professional branding, but I'm not motivated to do it just yet. Maybe Kim, you can make it one of my OKRs, and then I would
It's
do it
only
because I
March.
can.
It's only
Yeah,
March.
yeah,
Oh, March.
Early.
yeah. It'll
No.
be June before you know it, and I'll still be like planning vacations and not doing professional branding. Just I need to work on it. Maybe Aaron and team should make me like a host of something so I could just treat it like work and then
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Yes.
Riley, what about you? Are you any groups?
Well, for me, I have a couple. So I was in a sorority in college. I was in Kappa
Nice.
Theta. So I have my Theta sisters, that whole
Mhm.
network, which is super uplifting. And it really like when I first graduated in the pandemic, I was like, man, I have no connections. But then you start to realize like so many people and so many other women want to help you succeed and want to help see you get
Mhm.
opportunities. And then also, I'm in a couple alumna groups for CU Boulder. So
Mhm.
that's awesome to be a part of on LinkedIn. And they really,
Mhm.
like, hey, like, we're looking for women in this position or,
Right.
really making a point to uplift. So I think those are great communities to be a part of if you can.
Mhm.
But definitely, I mean, just like my close girlfriends, we are the ones who like they support me. I can lean on them for support.
Mhm.
It's just different with other girls. Like they know what you're going through and
Mhm.
know what it's like to be a woman in corporate America. So I always appreciate that where it's like, you can always go to them for advice or
Mhm.
and like to have like mentors where it's like I know if I need advice, I can go to you, Chantel or Cami. And
Mhm.
I appreciate like those interpersonal relationships so much too.
Oh, for sure. It's my pleasure. Um, yeah, so any parting words as we wind everything down? Join groups, be friends, stay in touch with people you like. If you don't want to be friends, it's fine. Mentor up, mentor down, circle.
Don't say
Um,
sorry
Don't
before
say
don't
sorry.
everything.
say sorry and take just out of all of your emails. Remove it. Just is clipped. It's clipped for the word just. We don't do just.
You don't have to
Mind your
justify.
business about whether or not people are going to have kids. Let's see what else.
Don't be
Raises,
afraid.
not roses.
Yeah, raises not roses. Don't be
Raises, definitely raises, not roses. Can you imagine if people just got roses? Like,
oh
happy
I
no.
mean,
anniversary.
it happens.
Oh my goodness. Even though I do like stargazers and lilies, but like raises, not stargazer
Okay.
lilies, please.
You
Be
like both.
nice.
You can get both. You can have both.
No,
um,
and
I just want to thank you guys for your time. Thank you for committing, doing this, being open, being good partners. It's nice to work with cool women, and we got 7 more days of Women's History Month, so go out and do something awesome. Um, but thank you guys, and hope to see you again very soon. Thank you guys for watching.
Thanks. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
bye.
Bye.